Hey guys, it's Carolyn. Welcome back to the podcast. And if you haven't set your goals for 2024, it's not too late, right? I know sometimes we can procrastinate and then you get to the point, well, I haven't set them yet, I'm not going to. And so today I'm very excited about our guest to talk about goal setting and how to achieve our goals. Miss Holly Green is a best-selling author, award-winning keynote speaker, and CEO and managing director of The Human Factor. And when I Googled who is the expert on to set goals and reach goals for your business, she is the expert that I found. So very much welcome to the podcast, Ms. Holly. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for taking the time. And before we dive into goal setting and all that good stuff, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, where you started, how you got to where you are now.
Okay, sure. I have a BA and BS, but mine is behavioral science. I have a master's of science degree in organization development and then postgraduate work in neurophysiology. So all about how and why do you think and behave the way you do at work, and how and why do those other strange people you work with think and behave the way they do. From a professional perspective, I've worked for some of the world's greatest companies, everyone from AT&T to the Coca-Cola Company, Dell Computer, etc., and have had my own business and consulting practice for 23 years, where I work with everyone from Fortune 100 to startup organizations, and really love the work in the small and mid-sized business sector because I feel like I can have a more significant difference in helping others be even more successful. I'm also very lucky to work with elite players outside of the business world. So I work with United States Navy SEALs, Top Gun fighter pilots, Olympic athletes, senior NFL referees, orchestras, etc. So people who are unquestionably the best, the very, very best at what they do. So I try to constantly translate a lot of that into what can we do at work every day to be elite in what we've chosen to do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So how important is it to have goals?
Well, it's crucial if you want to win. So many of us work really, really hard to just not lose. And that is dramatically different than working hard to win. And pretty much everybody I come across is working hard. So it seems kind of silly to me to just be going through the drudgery and the motions, of constantly trying to get things done. And that's not losing, but it's not winning, and not win and winning is a whole lot more fun, right?
Absolutely.
So having crystal clear definitions of winning, which translates into goals, is really important if you want to enjoy the journey along the way as well.
So how do you help people in figuring out what those goals are and what they should be?
Well, and this is probably the core of why I got into doing what I do. Because I was working with some of these elite players early on in my career, and I recognized a huge difference in the way they are crystal clear with specificity on what the target is long before they sit down and say, okay, next week we're going to do this and we're going to have this project plan and we're going to, and found that in business, and I was working for great companies, so it wasn't that I was working at shoddy places, if you will, but found that we weren't using some of the things we know about how the brain really works. We were pretending at work that people are logical, rational creatures.
Mm.
And we know we're not. We're simply not. We make almost all of our decisions emotionally, then we layer on logic to justify or validate those decisions. So, how do we tap into how the brain really works and take advantage of that? And that's a big shift in as it applies to goal setting. It applies to 1,000 other arenas in the workspace as well. But to focus in on goal setting, elite players are crystal clear with specificity on what the win is first. Okay. So, not just saying, oh, we're going to be good at customer service, we're going to make sure all our clients love us. Because the problem is not that that doesn't mean anything, it's that it means something different to every single person. Right? Words have meaning that's unique to each individual. So getting crystal clear with specificity, like I always say, like a fly on the wall could see it, right? So that you're not using words like excellence, customer service, responsiveness. You're teasing those out into what does that mean clearly so that different people can interpret differently. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really important. And it's much harder. People will nod and say, okay, yeah, I'm really clear. It's a lot harder than we think it is, because if I ask someone, um, first of all, they have a really hard time articulating it.
Yeah.
We know in our head what we want, but the ability to articulate with specificity is lacking in many of us.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, once we have clarity in our head, and by the way, we can gain that clarity because we're sure ourselves. And as the leader, it's our job to be sure. And we're not going to pretend like we really care about your opinions or ideas. We're just going to proclaim it. Alternatively, we can, get together our senior leaders and we can sit down and we can figure it out, and then we can get clarity that way. Or we can ask everybody in the organization. Every approach has its pros and cons, or advantages and disadvantages, and those are primarily in cost and time,
Mm-hmm.
but also in trust levels. If people in your organization don't trust you a lot, or there's been some trauma, if you will, in the organization, it's better to involve more people, etc. But once you've got that clarity,
Mm-hmm.
and you can truly articulate it with specificity, and we do it across a minimum of 13 categories in any business. It doesn't matter the sector, and we use the same things for nonprofit and government agencies, by the way. And then we'll add a few that are custom to the sector. Everything from tools, systems, process, of course, your financial objectives, org structure, products, services, everything we can think of, we want to get specificity on the win.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've done that, now you want to apply a little trick, if you will. And it's future, active, past tense language. Okay, so let me outline a sentence that would have future, active, past tense language. On or before, and I'm just going to completely fabricate something, okay? On or before March 30th, 2024, future, when we have implemented, active. Now I want to state what the win is. We will have gained 14 new customers in this region or market at a minimum Y margin, X revenue. We will have retained these customers for the next 3 years. On and on and on we could go, right? But you're always speaking presumptively, as if there is no doubt, no question, no hesitation that whatever the win is will have been achieved.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yes. So you're putting it like in the future, but it's like a guaranteed. There's no doubt in your
Yes.
mind that it's going to happen.
Yes. So you're looking back and you're stating it, you're declaring it. Now, you're not talking about how we got there, who did what, etc. That's the next step. And everybody always wants to dive right into that.
Right.
Oh, we will have hired 4 people and launched this training and blah, 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 blah. No, we don't care about the how yet, or, the journey, if you will. We only care about what does it look like. I always tell people, it's like saying, I'm going on vacation. Well, that's very exciting. Where are you going? Are you going to Boise? Are you going to Bali? And while there's nothing wrong with Boise, it ain't Bali, right? And the journey's dramatically different. So we want to be first very clear on what is our Bali, right? What's the target? What's the outcome or deliverable, the objective, if you will? Now, once we've nailed that with specificity, and it's not one sentence, it's going to be a myriad of things, right? Because again, we're trying to paint like a Rembrandt. A very, very clear details, like you could step into the painting and eat the fake fruit on the table. What we don't want is a Picasso, right? We don't want abstract. And almost every company announces, here's the financial targets, here's our EBITDA goal. Well, first of all, no one even knows what that means. And the only person tracking that is your CFO or your controller, right? But we talk about it as if it has meaning and if it's going to drive moment-to-moment decisions. It does not. Nobody thinks, oh, this pain in the butt customer just called and I have to do this. Gosh, let me think about the EBITDA target and make a decision. Right? We don't. But that's what your goals should drive, is moment-to-moment decision making. That's the whole point of it. So that everyone is aligned and moving in the same direction, playing the same game by the same rules. So there's a lot of subtleties to this, but in the end, it really boils down to get crystal clear on winning. Be able to articulate it with specificity so that if you have 50 people, at least 49 of them can tell you, and it all means exactly the same thing. Everybody's crystal clear. There's always one, right? All right. And you're doing this always using that presumptive, future, active, past tense language. Every meeting, you're using that language. Every conversation, every team you talk to, you're constantly talking about winning as if there's no question, hesitation, or doubt you will have achieved. Okay, this doesn't mean you ignore problems along the way. You reset and you restate. Then, once you've done that, which is really the hardest part for us, most of us in business, once you have done that, documented it, shared it, gotten everybody crystal clear on it, then you move into project planning, or what we call breakthrough modeling. So we want to make sure then we're very, very clear in segments of time. Okay. We're overly optimistic as animals.
Yes.
After 12 to 13 weeks, we think every project's possible. We can layer on 400 new activities. It's not going to be a problem, right? That's why we always plan out and everything happens in the third or fourth quarter. Okay.
Yeah.
So you want to chunk it into time, and again, take advantage of how the brain really works instead of pretending. You chunk it into, what are we going to do substantially? What will we have done substantially different in the next 3 months? Gotcha. Then what will we have done, incrementally different in the next 3 months? Then from 3 to 9 months, what will we have done substantially different? And after 9 months, what will we have done transformationally different? For that first 3-month incremental period, you are going to plan with great specifics again. Who did, what did, how did, when did, with what resources. Okay, so that's your project plan. Who did, what did, when did, how did, with what resources. We always forget that last one. We think, okay, the sales team, increased sales by 15%, driving blah, 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 and revenue and targets and clients, etc. But then we never say, oh yeah, and marketing had to have provided more materials and more leads. And, it's a funny thing. We think there's some magic wand we have at work. I wish we did. So you do that in the 3 months, because remember, our brain is best with specificity and realism, if you will, in the next 12 to 13 weeks. Then a rolling 3 months after that, you keep chunking the project plan. Okay, 3 to 9 months is a little less specificity because we don't know what exactly is going to happen. 9 months plus is a little less. So then you just roll that every 3 months. You make sure the next 3 months, and you make your way through. And this is constant. There is no more. We're not seeing these 5-year strategic plans. Can you even imagine 5 years ago if we had done a plan? I mean, we would have been worldwide pandemic, right? Supply chain issues, blah, 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 right? So it's kind of silly. You can have guideposts out that far. We want to be $100 million company in 5 years. Now let's chunk that into each year and back into what does that mean we have to do in the next 12 months.
Gotcha.
Okay. But thinking out 5 years, 10 years, a year is even a challenge, quite frankly. And that's why you do that rolling 3 months, constantly checking in. And the key is to measure what matters, and only what matters. Don't measure things or have a lot of busy work for things that do not contribute directly to your win.
Gotcha.
Okay. And the question there is, how will we know we have won?
Yes.
How will we know? We've won the Super Bowl. Okay. So we will know we have won because it's proclaimed we won the last game. We had the best record, blah, blah, blah. How will we know we have won? And that's what you set your measures to.
Gotcha.
Other than that, it's easy.
No, and this is amazing because I'm kind of in the in-between space. So of course, our company has goals and here's our guidelines, and one of those is excellence. But
yeah.
How do you take somebody like that and get them into the clarity? What are the steps involved to get to that crystal clear?
That's a great question. And that's so much of where I spend my time is what, just teasing out of a leader's head. What does that mean? So what does that look like to you? When you say excellence, tell me more about what you mean. What do you see people doing? What are the results we're achieving? How are we getting it done? Not only the what, but the how, right? Because that's your values and your guiding principles in an organization. And those are crucial. That's when people, are fired because they just didn't fit, right? Yes. So that's all what builds your culture as well significantly is how. So what and how. So you sit down with a leader and say, for my team, let's say you're running a division, a team, a unit. What what exactly are we producing?
Mm-hmm.
What exactly are the deliverables that we will demonstrate that will indicate to you we have achieved excellence? Now, you're going to be shocked how often your leader cannot answer that question.
Yeah.
And that means you're set up to fail.
Yeah.
Because you're supposed to be a mind reader, and none of us are. We think we are in many, many ways. We're very sure of it. That's one of the what we call bubbles, the filters we have about the world. But we don't, and it means you're set up to fail. So it is crucial to have those conversations. What specifically do you expect our team or me as an individual to produce, to deliver, in what time frames, etc.? So really diving in and forcing your leader to get clear in his or her own head on that is very, very helpful, right? In very large organizations, of course, I work with units or teams or divisions oftentimes, as well as the senior leaders, and it is shocking how often things like excellence or we're going to be the most customer oriented. What the hell does that mean? I don't know. I mean, I could make up 1,000 definitions.
No.
And a lot of them would be good, but is that what you're looking for?
Is that, yeah, absolutely. And I think too, especially as business owners, that we know what we want. We just expect everybody else already knows without telling them.
Yes.
So how do you break that cycle?
Well, that's another, your confirmation bias, proving yourself right, is your strongest one. But the belief that everybody understands what you're thinking is a big one. It's up there in the top 5 to 7 for sure. And that you think you know what other people are thinking, that's up there really big too, right? The sunk cost fallacy. I mean, we have a whole list of like 300 of these mental models. Again, we call them bubbles because they're like the little thoughts that pop up over your head. It is an amazing thing. So it is checking in. If you're the leader and you think people have it, then ask questions. Okay? Ask questions. So what's the most important thing for us to achieve this month? And see what they say, or this week, or, it depends on your scale of the project, etc. And you're going to be very surprised that you cannot over communicate the definition of winning. It is never ending. We don't have the very simple, I have a lot of friends that are elite athletes and referees, etc. And it is so clear because the rules are clear. The scoreboard is right there. We know, right? It's, but how often is that the case at work?
Yeah, not very often.
Don't have a scoreboard, most companies, right? Nope. We come up with one maybe at the beginning of the year, then we put it in a binder and, on our back shelf, and we pull it out at the end of the year for bonuses, maybe. We don't have clear rules in the game. We don't have other people giving input on, are you winning or not, right? And the other big difference is when we look at elite military units or symphony orchestras or athletes, they get to practice a lot. Okay. They get to practice getting it right. Yeah. And they get feedback against that. Well, every single thing you do at work is practice. But do you get any feedback about it? Yeah. And, I always tell my clients, it's not like the boss is going to say, listen, you guys can practice Monday through Thursday and on Friday do your actual job. Okay. It's just, not realistic. So we have to get a mindset that every time we show up late for a meeting, we're practicing being late. Every time we don't deliver what we said we were going to deliver in the last meeting, we have just practiced. And when we practice things, it creates myelin wiring in our brain. Those are your neural, without getting too nerdy, those are your neural networks. And the thicker the myelin wiring, the more likely you are to do the same thing over and over again. Okay, so every time you're late, you've just created a connection, and that thread, that's the myelin between the neurons, gets thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker. And the thicker it is, the more likely we are to walk that same path.
Gotcha.
So there are a lot of things that collude with all of us. First of all, we weren't really taught to do this, most of us, for work. It's fascinating how we teach it to athletes, clearly teach it to elite military, clearly teach it to performers, musicians, etc. But we don't teach it at work.
Yeah.
And so then we have no basis or ability to catch ourselves practicing the wrong thing. I mean, imagine if your football team got on the field and made mistakes in lining up, and they made the same mistake over and over. Okay. Yeah. I mean, other than the Raiders, right? No, but there's no way that would work,
Yeah,
right? People are
absolutely.
held accountable to get it right. And when they
Gotcha.
don't get it right, they practice getting it right.
Huh.
So that's also a huge underlying sort of foundational notion around this goal setting. It becomes a way of who we are and how we be in our organizations and as individuals,
Hmm.
and it bleeds into everything.
Yeah, because the
It's not
psychology
just
of
a
the office,
process,
like
you know.
runs the business, like is the business. The
Yes,
psychology of the owners is.
yeah, it's not, oh God, HR is giving us these damn forms again that we have to fill out at the beginning of the year and then, put numbers on them at the end of the year, right? It is not a singular approach. It has to be woven into everything in the organization because it's a mindset.
Yeah. So walk me through like one of your clients' journeys, what that looks like.
Well, we meet typically September, October. We sit down, we draft what does winning look like. I provide the process tools, the workbooks, the worksheets, all of that kind of thing, and facilitate the conversation. Because I always tell people I work in every sector you could possibly imagine. So if I can understand it just coming into your business, then we're probably at about the right level, right?
Hmm.
We've,
Hmm.
we've gotten rid of the words excellence or responsive or whatever.
Yeah.
So we draft that. Then everybody has about a month to sit with that, noodle it, go back to their team, talk to
Uh-huh.
their team about it. Does this make sense? Have we missed anything, etc. We come back together, typically November, and we say, all right, this is it. This is carved in stone for the next 3 months, unless something totally, unexpected happens. We put all of that together, and then it cascades to teams. So
Okay.
then we go back to our team and we say, here's what winning looks like for the company overall. Here's our piece of this. That's where the project planning or the breakthrough modeling happens. Okay, what's our team going to deliver? Who's going to do what by when with what resources? We come back and we share all of that across all of the teams so that every team has insight into the other teams. That's
Uh,
really important as well because you're an interdependent organization, or there
mhm.
would be no need for your team. And then you begin communicating that constantly and extensively to the organization. So we call it inform. We tell people, okay, and we inform throughout the year, at least once a month. We're coming back to something where we're showing the measures, the progress, etc. You have to inspire.
Mhm.
Why should I give a crap?
Mhm.
What's in it for me? Because that's
Mhm.
everybody's favorite radio station, WIIFM, right? What's in it for
Yeah.
me? You have to translate those goals into why it matters, why it's important, etc. That becomes, we inspire people. Why do I, as the leader, care? Why
Mhm.
am I vested in this? And then we engage, and we engage people through feedback, constant feedback, and realigning as necessary, sharing customer input, constantly making sure everybody's a part of the game and has a clear role in it. So inform, inspire, engage. And there are 7 to 8 questions that we have that we say you must ask yourself as a leadership team every month to assess whether you've done that or not.
Gotcha.
Okay. So again, a whole methodology. We've tried to come up with as many tools and prompts and worksheets and tips and you name it. Because even though this is the most singular, most important thing you do in an organization, because it's what should drive every result, objective, deliverable,
Mhm.
people feel like they don't have the time to do it.
Yeah.
I'm too busy just, responding to emails and running about like a chicken with my head cut off. So we've tried to, over the last 20 years, really get this to a place where it is, I don't want to say simple because it's not simple. It'll be the hardest work you ever do as a leader,
Yeah.
at any, a supervisor, a team leader, etc. It's the hardest work you'll ever do because you're dealing with darn humans.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's hard, but we've tried to smooth the path, if you will, as much as we can. And then if any of your listeners want just a good overview of all this, I'm happy to share complimentary a workbook.
Mhm.
Um, you tell me the best way you want to do
Yeah,
that.
we'll get it. We can get a link from you. And we'll put it in the show notes. That would be absolutely helpful.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I'm happy to do that. And in the book, Using Your Brain to Win, we outline all of this as well with a little more detail and a lot more brain exercises and brain work. And But again, I'm happy to just for free just share the strategic agility overview. That's what we call it, not strategic planning, because it's not about planning.
Yeah.
It's about being agile in your organization,
Hmm.
moving fast, but having focus and flexibility. And so very intentionally, we call it something different so that people will understand this is not the same old HR crap that, I'm supposed to fill out the form.
No, absolutely. So if people want to find more about you and more about the human factor, where would they go?
Thehumanfactor.biz, B-I-Z, is the
Gotcha.
website. And there are probably 20 to 30 free tools. Go into the store. There's a whole lot of stuff for free in there, assessments and articles and all kinds. I don't think the strategic agility overview is in there. So you'll have to ask for that separate, but there's a whole lot of other stuff in there.
Gotcha. And all of your books are on Amazon. I wouldn't
They
check
are?
you out,
Yep.
followed you as an author. So, man, I really appreciate all your great insight and all your great information. I hope people will take your advice. I know I'm going to go do a little more work on the stuff that we're working on because this has been very, very helpful to me, especially as business owners. We look to grow and always be growing because that's what our business needs.
Well, of course, right? If you're not growing, then you're withering and eventually dying.
Nobody wants
So,
that.
yeah, and growing can look like a lot of different things too. It doesn't necessarily mean just growing revenue, right?
Oh,
Maybe
absolutely.
it's the same revenue, but you've grown in a different way. So, it's interesting how we're so in the habit of saying it
Uh-huh.
but not being clear.
No.
So that was
Yeah,
a great
I agree. And
example.
I didn't realize how vague I was.
Well, we all are. I listen. I do this stuff for a living, day in and day out, and I find myself making the same mistakes as I'm trying to get clients not to make. So, we all are, and we all can continue to get better as we go through our lives. And by the way, this same approach can be applied to our personal lives.
Mhm.
We use it in our family for vacation planning. It is a mindset, a way of being. And it is so much more fun to win than to just
Yeah,
bust our bums and not lose.
I agree. Well, thank you so much for the time, my dear. I appreciate it.
You are most welcome. Happy New Year.